Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. This is Nate Whitson, and I'm super stoked to talk about Ultimate Intimacy, the brand, the app, all the conversations that come along with this today. Clearly, as a podcast for Christian men, I bet this will be one of the most listened to just by title alone. I know it's one that I would listen to just by searching the titles myself. But before we jump into that, before I introduce my guest, I want to share this story that I heard. I can't remember the pastor that told it, but I remember years ago listening to the Song of Solomon series. I think it was Tommy Nelson is the name of the guy that should get credit for this. But he told this story talking about sex. And he was saying that there was an African village. And in this village, there was a large body of water that everybody in the village had to do all of their basic life skills around. That's where they cleaned, that's where they washed, that's where they cooked. Everything revolved around this body of water. The problem was that it was full of alligators. And because of that, what you would see in the community and what you'd see throughout the village was that people had these terrible encounters with these alligators. And unfortunately for this ancient village, it was taboo to speak out loud about the alligators. So all throughout the village, you would see people that were scarred and maimed and had these terrible encounters with these alligators, but it was considered rude or taboo to speak about this. So instead of being able to discuss it and say, hey, there's this crazy stuff that happens down here, we just choose to say nothing at all. And so because of that, this village kept getting hurt over and over, generation after generation of people that were getting hurt and maimed by these alligators that they couldn't speak about. And the pastor tells this story and he says, okay, truth be told, it's not a real village. Maybe it is, but it really wasn't a true story. But what he said was, the analogy of that story was so true about sex in our culture, and in particular in the Christian culture. We have people that are walking around maimed and hurt and frustrated, and sometimes their spirit and their soul has been killed because the devil has taken this really beautiful thing that God intended and created, and people have been hurt by it. The devil has turned and twisted it. And unfortunately, what we've done as a society is saying, hey, it's taboo to talk about sex out loud. It's taboo to be able to say, like, what can I do? What can I not do? And so we say nothing. And deep inside, we have these scars and these hurts, and we're being maimed all the time by this beautiful thing that's been hijacked and taken out of context. And so one of the things that I'm super excited about with Nick and Amy is that they are the founders of a brand and an app called Ultimate Intimacy. And their marriage was transformed years ago by just putting these principles into play. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that story and talk about the tools and the things that they are doing to help Christian marriages in particular to go from good to great. And so today, guys, I'm super grateful to have you on to talk out loud about marriage and sex and intimacy because it's time. You know, before we hit record, we were just kind of discussing a little bit of just like, man, we just need more voices, you know, sharing these conversations. And you guys are having these every day. We're grateful for what you're doing. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks for being on today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. And what a great opening. It's so true. It's something we get so many messages almost on a daily basis of people that are really struggling in this area. And, you know, as you see, we do a ton of polls. We want to know what the audience is thinking, and sexual intimacy is a huge key to having a successful and happy marriage. And both men and women agree. I think the poll we took was like 91% agreed that, you know, that is vital to a happy marriage. So it is something that we need to talk about. I know in my upbringing, I wasn't talked about very much. So when I got into marriage, it was Yeah, our honeymoon night was pretty funny, wasn't it?
That's
It's true.
okay.
Right.
Uh,
Learn.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what though? It is so true. Like it isn't talked about. Like we kind of grow up, a lot of us in Christian homes, just kind of thinking of it as almost like it's dirty, almost as if it's secretive, and we bring some of these things into our marriages without any kind of context, any kind of guidelines, any kind of like open, true conversations. And then you're just
Mhm.
left to fumble around with this beautiful gift that you have no clue what you're doing with. And then you get hurt, then you get fragile, then you get separated, and then you go, why is divorce happening the way it is? Why do we not see Christian marriage as being the ultimate, the best examples? And it's because of so much of this that you guys are taking on. And it makes me think, like, give us maybe just a little recap of 2017 or before. What was the state of your marriage? And I know you don't mind, but if you don't mind sharing that, and what led you to, doing this?
I'm going to let Amy lead into this, but I want to say something while it's on my mind really quick. The majority of couples out there, and we believe this is, you've got to have the emotional intimacy together before the sexual intimacy is, going to come and be good. I think we almost reversed it a little bit, right? Like, I think when we learned that we could talk about sex and the really difficult things, it made us be able to talk about the emotional things a lot easier. And that's where we were really struggling, was with opening up emotionally, right? So we might have approached things maybe accidentally backwards, but I think it really, still got us to the end result or the right place. Because when we started talking about sex openly, man, if you can talk about that openly,
That's
it
right.
makes other things. So I just wanted to throw that out. But regardless, whatever path's taken, as long as couples can really start communicating and opening up. But I wanted to just mention that before I
Mhm.
forgot.
Yeah.
Well, communication is key. So without going into our whole story, because that would take the whole podcast, but I actually went into the marriage with a pretty strong and healthy sex drive. And so that was actually top notch for us when we got married and years in and had kids. And then we started having some financial things going on and some real breakdowns in
Yeah.
communication is what I would call it. And so all of a sudden I stopped craving sex. Like I almost thought, what is wrong with me? I'm broken. And like he just said, it really came down to a breakdown of emotional communication and that connection. Like you cannot have an amazing and passionate sex life
Mm.
when you are not 100%, and especially for women, 100% emotionally connected to your spouse. And when you're not emotionally connected, for whatever reason, there's 1,000 barriers.
Yeah.
As women, we kind of shut down sexually. But when we shut down sexually, a husband shuts down emotionally.
Yeah,
And
that's
we
right.
talk about this on our podcast and our social media all the time. That game that couples start playing. Well, if you're not doing this for me, or if you're not doing this for me, that gap gets bigger and bigger. And
And I would say most couples play that game in their marriage at one time or another.
absolutely.
Like, well, if you're not providing me this,
Absolutely.
I'm going to withhold this. And then that gap just gets bigger and bigger. And it's a standoff. Like, who's going to give in first?
And
Yeah.
you almost have to give in emotionally first because that has to be key.
Mhm.
But at the same time, those years that were really hard for us, just with the trials that we were going through, I thank goodness I was sexually
Okay.
wired to never cut that off. Like I still wanted that, and I knew that was important to him. And usually that's the first thing to go. But I truly believe to this day that that is what kept us together,
Absolutely.
was
Mhm.
keeping the sexual intimacy strong, which is so hard. And so the entire reason we created the app and started the podcast, number one, our motto is that marriage should never be mediocre.
Mm.
He's a romantic. I'm a romantic. We got married not to be roommates. We got married to have passion and romance and to desire each other and to want to make love to each other. And I know that most marriages, that's what they want, right? They want that soulmate, that passion that they both crave, and that can die so easy. So I was just going to say the entire reason we creative and are doing what we are doing is to help people break down those barriers. So not only the emotional intimacy is amazing, but the sexual intimacy can always stay strong. And we've been married 21 years with 4 kids. Kids are starting
Nice.
to move out. we could testify that you can keep it amazing.
Yeah.
It just takes effort and communication.
Yeah, I would say we're at a place probably better than we've ever been in our life, right? Like even after 21 years, I fall more and more in love with you or
But it's not like we haven't been through anything hard.
Correct.
It's that we let those hard things make us stronger. And you have to be vulnerable and communicate about it.
well, and you know, you made a point that it probably was the sexual intimacy that really held us together because most men feel love through touch, through physical touch. And I know a lot of women out there think, oh, my husband just wants to have sex. But for men, it's so much different than that. Like most men legitimately feel love through physical intimacy. So you cut that off, and then all of a sudden you're going to see that gap become wider and wider, getting back to the game that we kind of, you know, talk about that a lot of couples play. So
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Fun.
Have you guys, I don't know if you guys have read the book or heard of Emerson Eggerichs, and he talks about the crazy cycle in a book called Love and Respect. And he has a
I've
marriage
not
series
read it
built.
yet, but I'm awesome.
yeah,
It's incredible. Yeah. And it really describes exactly what you're calling the game. He just calls the crazy cycle. She
Mhm.
withholds, he spins out, he withholds, and it just spins. And man, no matter what you call it, we all recognize exactly what that is. And then,
yeah,
like when you stop the crazy cycle or you stop the game, you go, what are we doing? Like we're only hurting ourselves. Why are we doing this? And yet,
yeah,
like, isn't it amazing? Like in this relationship that starts off, like you're saying, Amy, like, so on the right foot can get so far off track and you go, how did we end up over here? Right. It's the saddest thing in the world.
And I think a lot of it's, you know, pride or ego because, you know, in marriage, you're like, you know, it's so easy to say, well, she needs to change this or he needs to change this. And so, you know, that, I mean, it's so hard to just say, you know what? Yeah, I am in the wrong. I need to do this. I need to meet her emotional needs better or, you know, vice versa. And
It's amazing how easy that disconnect can just get farther. And that disconnect usually happens by simple and stupid things.
Absolutely.
Like you start prioritizing your kids over your marriage. You start prioritizing your phone over your marriage. You stop dating. You stop having fun together. Like once you start losing those little aspects, you just get farther apart. And then it just, you know,
Yeah. How did we end up over
so
here? What, you know,
Yeah.
you see that like 1 degree, the 1 degree off kind of mark starts off no big
yeah,
deal. If a plane is 1 degree off and it starts off at LA, but it's 1 degree off, it ends up
yeah,
in like Massachusetts or something, right? Like
exactly.
nowhere near the
So true.
destination.
that's a great analogy.
So tell me, like, let's talk about this idea of intimacy. So this is called ultimate intimacy. And from
Yeah.
a guy's perspective, again, this is a podcast primarily for Christian men, but I have a sneaky suspicion that women are listening in too. But ultimate intimacy, when men hear intimacy, when I became familiar with you guys, I thought ultimate intimacy. What comes to my mind is sex. But I know it's not the answer. In fact, the more you get into some of the tools and conversations and things that you guys have, you realize that intimacy is so much more. Maybe talk about that for us a little bit. Help the men listening today to go, intimacy is way bigger than that.
We'll start. We pull a ton of people, thousands of people. And I can tell you, and we also have a Christian audience. Almost every man that has responded has said sex isn't about sex. It's about being desired. It's not my wife wanting me. It's about emotionally and physically connecting with my wife. Like
for
they
sure.
all agree to that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as a woman, like I see that. Like I totally believe that it's so much deeper for men. And so I'm trying to help women understand that. Like they want you to desire them. They want to emotionally connect with you. And sometimes they need to know what you need for that to happen. Right?
Yeah.
So much deeper.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, getting back to your question as well, too, I was the same as you. Second I would hear intimacy, I would think of sex. But there, you know, obviously you have the emotional intimacy, you have the spiritual intimacy that needs to be there, you have the financial intimacy. I mean, you have so many aspects of, I guess, things that encompass everything, which ultimately lead to, you know, the emotional and physical intimacy, you know, really connecting. And one of the reasons we named it ultimate intimacy is really just covering all those aspects. And
Yeah.
when you're hitting on all cylinders, I guess, on all the different things, I mean, that is what everyone's trying to obtain, is that ultimate intimacy. And I think it's a roller coaster, even when you obtain it, then you have a month that's struggling because, uh, you know,
Stop.
Life.
health issues, financial issues or whatever. And it's kind of a roller coaster, but just trying to, I guess, always move forward to try to have that ultimate intimacy. And when you get there, there's nothing better.
Yeah, that's
It's
great.
amazing.
Yeah, that's so great. I'll tell the story here that for you. So I had purchased the deck of cards from you guys, and I did not like. I hadn't talked to my wife yet about any of this, and I was so nervous to talk to her about this, kind of conversation. And I think this is just trying to be very like transparent in real life here in this podcast for people. We have like an amazing marriage. My wife, like if you get to know her or if you knew anybody, like she's just incredible, incredible lady. And we have a really good, very strong marriage. But this was an area of it's like, I don't know how to break through this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I
Been
really
there.
like to do more of this. I'd like to know more of what you want. Do you want like, where do we even go for this? Right. So I thought, well, I liked the approach that you guys were using. And I thought, okay, well, fortunately, finally, there was something that didn't involve pornography or nudity or something that I knew, like if it was too racy, she's instantly out, like would have been offended, would have been hurtful. And so I thought, well, this is possible. Like this could possibly help open up a door. Right. And it was super cool. So, but I am like so nervous to bring to her to my favorite person in the world, right? Like this is what's crazy about it. We're this pride or ego, Nick, that you're talking about, whatever this wall is, it's really hard for us to get over that, especially if we've ever been hurt on either side, right? If your wife's been, we've hurt our wife over the years, no doubt. It's part of living with somebody that long. We've been
Yeah.
hurt, and men don't want to say that we've been hurt, but there's hurt. And now you're trying to bridge the gap with something like this, and you're so nervous. But talk about like some of the ways that your tools in the app can help with, like it did with us, to be able to bridge
I
that
think
gap.
it was the same thing for us. I mean, honestly, like,
Our story is opposite because I was like thinking I'm broken, right? Like, why am I not craving it anymore? And so I bought a bedroom game for Nick.
true.
True story. And
Yeah.
that's what started this whole thing. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just like literally need something new in the bedroom. Like
Yep.
maybe that's what it is. Maybe. And before I realized it was the emotional breakdown and all the other stuff, right? So I bought Nick a bedroom game and I was just like you. I was super nervous. I'm like, I don't want to offend him.
Right.
I don't want him to think that I'm not happy in the bedroom or that I'm trying to try something. Like, I just did not want to offend him. And I think I did. I
Yeah,
think when I gave it to him, he was like, wait, you never told me that you never like really talked about this and it was appropriate game. There wasn't any, I mean, it was just trying something new with words
Yep.
or whatever. And it literally, like after a couple days, he's like, okay, I'm sorry that I kind of got offended. I would like to try this. And it was the best night ever.
Yeah.
Right.
So first off, because just all the guys listening out there. So the first thing I thought is, well, it kind of came out of the side, right? Out of nowhere. And my first thought was, wait, is what we're not doing, or am I not good enough? Right.
Right.
Why is she thinking this? And I think for a lot of men, the opposite, introducing something to their wife could be the same thing. But then of course, after, a little bit of time, I'm like, all right, I'm a guy. What guy is going to reject his wife with a bedroom game? Maybe there's something more to this. So we talked about it. And yeah, like doing what the game said to do was like the most amazing night of my life.
Yeah.
This is why it's just as hard for us women to say, I want you to touch the clitoris. I want you to touch it like this. I would like you to try this. Like for most women, that's really hard to just come out when you're not good at having conversations.
Yeah.
Those are hard conversations for everybody. And so we were like, you're 15 years into our marriage at this time. And I'm like,
Yep.
I've never could have said, I like that. I don't like that. Like I didn't want to offend him. So I just ripped that Band-Aid off, bought that
Yep.
bedroom game. It started conversations that we have never had in our marriage.
Question.
And like we always say on our podcast, the minute you start talking about sex openly, and your desires and what feels good and what you would like to try, like all those things.
And,
You could talk about anything.
and you realize that, oh, this isn't as hard to talk about as I thought, right? Like this is pretty good. And even if we see differently on some things,
talk
you
about
just talk about it. And you're like, oh yeah, I want to understand how you feel. And she wants to understand how I feel. Yeah, it's been amazing. And so really, when we started being able to openly talk about sex, it seemed like we could talk about everything at that point.
Yeah.
And so after that bedroom game and fixing that situation and being connected sexually on another level, all of a sudden it was like, well, this is why I've been struggling. Well, I want to tell you why I'm upset with this. Well,
Mhm.
now that we can talk about this, let's talk about these deeper issues. And it seemed like everything over the next few months
Oh yeah,
just
night and day
fixed
difference.
itself, right?
Yeah, and it was really just our communication wasn't real good, right?
It
At the
we
at the
thought it
time.
was and it wasn't. And
Right.
so the app has the bedroom game and some of those sexual components to it. But as we started building it, because that's kind of where we started it, because we're like, we need to get a bedroom game that's appropriate in
Right.
Christian's hand. We're not going to see things or read things that are not
Go to a
okay.
safe
right?
place.
A
Yeah.
safe place for people to be able to talk about the subject. So as we're building the app, we start realizing we need an emotional component.
Mhm.
We need a spiritual component. We need all these other areas of intimacy where couples can start at ground zero and start talking about all these things that build up to the sexual intimacy. And when you can talk about everything, that's where ultimate intimacy comes from.
Well, and I'll say one thing real quick. The thing that's amazing about the app and what I think we've done is it's so hard to start those initial conversations. Like you said, you're just like scared to death. Like, how do I even start this? What do I do?
Yes.
If you go to the app is going to tell you what to ask, how to ask it. It's going to prompt those conversations. And if you're reading it from your phone or reading it from the app, then you're just doing what the phone's telling you to do. It's not,
You're not trying to come up with it.
yeah, you're not trying to
Mhm.
come up with it, but naturally it's going to get those conversations started like, oh, where's the, yeah, this. And then you ask your spouse that. And then you see, as you start having those conversations, it really breaks that ice and gets past that barrier and just makes it easier and easier. And I think there's something to it about rather than you asking, you personally asking the questions, it's you're getting the questions from the app and getting that conversation started.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to add, that's why we start with conversations around finance and family and individual questions and romance and all those things. And then it has the section on intimate conversations. And you've got a truth or dare, and then you've got it's progression, right? Like you
Yep.
have to start.
You can go to the intimate conversations immediately if you want. And there are some intimate conversations. But yeah, you can kind of start wherever you're comfortable at. And thing that's great about the bedroom game too, is you can customize it to whatever level you're comfortable at too. So everyone's marriage is different and what's going to be comfortable for some people might not be comfortable for other people. And you can really customize what fits your marriage and your needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. And if you are, please do us a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. It only takes a few seconds to do this, but it makes a huge difference for us, and it helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Thanks so much for listening and helping us out. Now back to the show. I think one of the really cool parts about it that I've experienced with it is that you don't have to be like, this is what I'm saying. It's just like, I'm just reading what the app said to try.
Yeah.
It's like it gives you permission to be like, yeah, like you would never just say like before you learn to talk, and we're still learning to talk, but it's what you guys have introduced for us is just game changing in what you're describing is so right on from a practical experience from somebody who just found you online. It was like, okay, finally, there it is. Because what it does is it allows you to get past the awkwardness of like, could we just do what this thing is showing me here? Like, and it's weird like that you would ever be embarrassed or weird like that with your wife, but we are like, it's just
Yeah.
something that God has given us this great gift, and it's been hijacked so bad that we have to figure out ways to reclaim it and to realize that it's beautiful and it's okay. Like I think you have a section
sure.
in your app, and one of the questions that guys will ask me, not yet publicly, like, podcast wise, But just in talking with men is like, Christian men want to know, like, well, what is okay? Like,
Yeah.
is it okay to do this? Like, is it okay to talk like this? Like, I think even for a lot of women, if you grew up in a very conservative Christian home, the idea of talking about it was always like the alligator story, right? And now you take that into your marriage though, and it's like to mention that I want to be touched like this or I want to do it like that is just like, I think for a lot of us, it's how do you get that out of your head, right? Or you're on the other side of it where you didn't walk with Christ and you've experimented with everything and you've tainted it the other side. And now you're out of whack because there's no intimacy. It's only
For sure.
sexual.
Yeah. I love that question. And we've been asked that a million times. In fact, we did a podcast on it. What is okay and not okay in the bedroom? And
We have the perfect answer.
I think it really comes down to is, does it bring you closer together as a couple or divide you as a couple? And I think if you can sincerely ask that, like some people say, well, how do you feel about, a vibrator or something like that? Well, is that going to be used to connect you on a deeper level? Or is that tool going to be used
To divide you.
to divide you? Is your husband away when you're using that? Or are you using it in your lovemaking to bring you closer together? And I really think if couples can answer that question honestly,
Yep.
it's a really,
Mhm.
really simple way to know, okay, is it bringing us closer together or is it dividing us as
We
a
both
couple?
consenting on this? Is this,
That's right. I mean,
Yeah,
the Bible doesn't give the explicit answers to some of the questions that people are asking. Some of them maybe, but for the
Yeah.
most part, it's just this is a holy union between a man and a woman, and it is holy, right? And so
Yeah.
when you can have two good-willed husband and wife come together and openly discuss that, and again, like one of the things I remember years ago hearing was the pastor was just saying, look, if she says no, it's just a no. Like, you
Yeah.
might have to, bite the head rail but you just
Yep.
respect it. And like, so even if you talk about it and you're like, it's okay for other people, but it's not okay to your wife, it's a no. And you just move on, right? Or at least for now.
And I think that's such a great point because so many people compare and think, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we do this? But every relationship's different. And you're exactly right. What works great for some couples might not work great for other couples, but you're exactly right. Just if it's something you're both in agreement and you feel good about and it brings you closer together as a couple, that's really what it's all about. I mean, we've evolved on things too, like things that we used to think there's no way in the world.
Yeah.
We're like, well, totally on board.
we've realized how much it's helped.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
a vibrator or whatever. Like there's things that we were just thought or taught that were not okay. And we're like, okay, the more we learn and the more we have been open to certain things that have pretty much changed our marriage,
Mhm.
you also gotta consent and really talk about it. I think with everything, it comes to you cannot have ultimate intimacy in your marriage if you are not vulnerable and honest and willing to talk about everything.
That's right. Yeah. It really makes me think as you're saying it that you go into marriage hearing the lie that it's 50-50 and it's not. It's 100-100. Right.
Yeah.
And I've heard you guys say this in your podcast in different ways, but when you're saying, I love my wife and I know it's important to her to talk, to take my time, to rub her back, like I might be like, can we let's just get this thing going, right? Like, but when I'm for my wife, and this is what makes Christian marriage beautiful, is when you are dying to yourself and you're saying, like, I know this matters to her. I know this matters to him. And you are serving one another, regardless of the response of your wife. In this case, for these Christian men listening, your responsibility is to die for her. And if you will do that,
Yeah.
which means dying to your ego, dying to your pride, dying to your fear of saying, this is how I feel about this and I don't like it, right? It'll transform your life.
Yeah.
I love that.
I
Love
100% agree.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been said better.
I also think it goes the other way too, because I hear so many wives that just cut things off or
Yeah.
won't initiate or won't prioritize it or put the kids first. And I love your words. I wish that more wives would feel the same way too, because
Mhm.
it takes you to make a marriage amazing. And our husbands do so much for us. Like, we just have to prioritize. It's all about the love language, right? Like, you have
Mhm.
to speak your spouse's love language. You can't just learn it. You have to speak it
That's a
to
great
have a good
point.
marriage.
I like that you said that, Amy. That's really great. Like, yeah, you can't just learn it. Like, yeah, I know what motivates her, but I don't do it.
Mm.
You know, like if that's
We
your
are,
Balance.
we are so opposite. He's physical touch. I'm like, what am I? Probably more quality time or
Gifts.
gifts. I don't know. It kind of changes, but I am not good at physical touch. I am not a physical touch person, but I have to come out of my shell and realize how important that is and to reward her.
Yeah, it's
Like,
great.
that's what speaking is being intentional about it, whether you like that stuff or not.
That's right.
Yeah.
My wife cringes every time you hear the phrase "happy wife, happy life." Because she's
Me too.
saying it's to your point, Amy, of just like that's not the right way to go. Like I don't want to be like that, like in the house. Like I'm not the queen. Like some people talk about. Like this is about us.
Mm.
This is about like
Yeah.
this is our team, right? That's what we use the word
Yeah.
team a lot in our house. Like we're talking to our kids, like, hey, same team. Like when you're trying to get one over on us, and you ask your mom, that's my answer, right? Because we're a team,
That's right.
Abs-
and so
Yep.
we try to approach it that way. Um, one of the things that we do, so we go by 4 principles and then we have 8 habits. Kind of like it covers a year of content and things that we're trying to do to help Christian men be the men that God made us to be. And so we have these 8 habits that we look at and cover. Well, you guys had a podcast I listened to not too long ago about 20 habits of successful couples. And I'm not asking you to remember it necessarily. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I want you to know, like when I listened to that, I thought that was great. And maybe you could just kind of think about like what are some things that you get from your audience and from your ministry to people? What are some of the habits of successful couples?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, I think one of the most important things, in my opinion, is putting each other first, even above your kids. A lot of people, when they hear that, they get mad and they say, "How can you say we neglect our kids?" That's not what we're saying. Honestly, like you're probably going to spend 10 hours a day serving your kids and maybe an hour a day with your husband. It's not about
Time.
it's not about the time. It's about just putting your spouse first and making sure that, you're a team and you're showing your kids that you're a team and showing them what marriage is really like. I mean, it's pretty awesome. I feel like our kids, they look at us, put our marriage first. And sometimes it's like, "Hey, mom and I are going out tonight. You guys are home alone for a few
Absolutely.
hours," whatever. But as they see that, they see what a marriage is like and what it should be like. And I think that's going to help them in their marriages as well. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. Cause I would say, I don't know percentage wise, but I would say probably more than 50%. I'm not putting my husband first.
Mm.
My kids come first, and that's, or vice versa. And that's really sad.
Absolutely.
I think setting boundaries is another really,
Setting boundaries is
We
very
did,
important.
we did an Instagram video on boundaries and it went viral and just got destroyed. And it's just amazing to me. Like, why would you not set boundaries? Why would you not talk about and say, okay, what is okay and what's not okay in this area?
In every area.
I mean,
Right.
it's crazy.
Yeah, so important. That list of 20, I could add like 50, but this one is so simple. And everyone's going to roll their eyes because it's like, duh. Date night is
Yeah.
key.
Mm.
And it goes along with putting your marriage first. And it doesn't, I get that like some people don't have babysitters, their kids are too young, or they don't have family or whatever. Date night doesn't have to always be going out. Date night doesn't always have to cost money. But having an amazing marriage always comes down to intentionality.
Yeah.
Are we connecting weekly without anyone around us, without distractions, without our phones? That is massive for a marriage. And that we went years, probably while our kids
We
were
did.
young. They're older now, but when they were young, it was easy for us, especially when we were going through some financial hard times, to just brush date night off, right? And when we started implementing that every single week,
It's life
yes,
changing.
Mm.
it was life changing because you need that time as a couple. I'm not talking just go out to dinner or whatever, but to flirt, to get ready for each other, to compliment each other, to have those awesome, intimate conversations that are not about your kids, that are about you. That's huge.
Yeah.
And it's all the husbands out there listening. Go plan a date night.
Mhm.
Like legitimately get some babysitters. Tell your wife you're taking her out and have something planned.
Already get
That's
ready. She loves she
mm,
wants to get dolled up and get ready for you and put on some makeup
mm.
and have you open the doors and take her somewhere. Like you have to do those things that you did when you were dating, and it goes both ways.
Well, and it's crazy how many people don't do date nights
Yeah.
anymore and they wonder why they're struggling. I mean, if you go back, you fell in love through implementing the exact things you do in dating.
Yep.
You're having deep conversations together. You're spending time together. The romance and things like that. Like every way you fell in love was through dating. So why would you not do that one thing continuously
Absolutely.
after you get married?
Absolutely.
It's just amazing.
And yet we
We
do.
have to step back. Have to step back and look at those little things that we did when we fell in love. Did you show up with flowers? Do that again.
Mhm.
Did you plan something that she just absolutely loved? Did you do an activity that you both love to
Yeah.
do together? Do that again. We have to go back and keep that throughout our marriage.
You know, one of
I will say
yeah,
this.
go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. It really is, when it all comes down to it, I think most couples think, oh, to transform our marriage, we have to do these big things. And these big things they're too big of mountains to climb. It isn't. It's the little things. You start implementing date night and doing these little things, and you're going to see the biggest changes in your marriage happen. And it's so true. So don't get discouraged. Don't feel like you have to have these life-changing things. Just start doing the little things again, and you'll see your marriage transform.
Absolutely.
I love that. And I was just going to say too, like what I love about what you've created is we don't always know the right questions to ask. And I think a lot of guys, their head spins like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to overcome this. I don't know what to ask her. And yet you've created it, right? Like if we can just get people talking, like in those
Yeah.
conversation starters, it's like, tell me about your favorite date we've done. Tell me like what you have coming up that you're excited about. Tell me something I can help you with, right? Like what you've created was like just get into the app and just use it again. Like it doesn't have to be just the sex positions part, which is super cool. Great job, you guys, on that part of it. But it really, like, to make the whole point of everything you said, like the ultimate intimacy is when you just enjoy each other, when you just really just love each other like you did in the very beginning. If you could ever get back to like, why did we get together in the first place? There was
Yeah.
something you saw, there was a trust that was there that was so right. And we just have to come back to that. And you guys have done a great job at allowing a space to be there where it is spicy and it's fun and it's right. And it allows men and women together to just say, like, tell me what's going on, because we just don't know how to do that very well.
Well, and to all the men out there listening who feel like, oh man, how do I get my marriage better? Is there any hope? The answer is yes.
Yep.
Like Amy and I were at a pretty deep place in our relationship, and now I could not imagine being more in love, more happy. And it really is the smaller things
Mhm.
you just start doing. And so, yeah, again, to all the men out there listening, I'm telling you right now, the keys are there, the tools are there. If you want to have the marriage you've dreamed of, we really believe these things can help you out tremendously. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I can testify to it. And I would say it's helping. Like we're on the journey of it. It's like it's opened the door, and I'm excited to see. You know, we've been married 19 years, and we have a great marriage. But like I
nice.
like what you guys have kind of framed this as, like people like us who have a really good marriage. That your desire is that they get great, and that's what I want
Yep.
to. I think it's why we want to talk out loud about this alligator issue, because there's so much hurt, and you can take down so much of the hurt if we can just get married couples talking, which sounds so funny, right?
Yeah.
We're together all day. Sometimes we see each other every day. We never talked, never like this. And so you guys have done a great job with that. I want to ask
Thank
a
you.
question really quick as we kind of wind down some of our time. And maybe if we need to, maybe I'll, if you guys are willing, we'll come back and do this sometime. But
Really.
what, what would you say to a man who just says, look, my wife is just like, they're at odds, and he just says like she's not interested. I don't know, what to do to get her to come to my side. I feel like I've tried everything. What do you say to that guy who's just really hurt right now and frustrated for his wife?
Yeah. Great question. So we get a lot of those emails. I mean, I can't even tell you how many of those emails we get on a daily basis. And one of the first things we ask is, well, have you sat down and talked about it?
Mhm.
And I'm not even exaggerating. 8, 9 out of 10 times the answer is no.
Yeah.
So here they are saying, I want this to change. We're really struggling. What can we do? This and that. And the simple question is, well, have you talked about it?
Mhm.
And the answer is typically no. So I would say, first of all, a lot of times in marriage, we just expect that our spouse can read our mind
Mhm.
or know what we need or how we're feeling. And that's not the case. I think first of all, you have to sit down and have that conversation and, you know, really express to each other how you feel, how you're feeling, what you need, and have that tough conversation. Because I really feel like if both of you now, obviously, if one spouse is interested in doing that and the other spouse isn't, like, I don't know what you do, right? To have a successful marriage, it takes two. But if both spouses really want things to get better, then having that conversation, I think, can be a game changer. We've actually had a couple people that have said, hey, every time we try to have this conversation, it gets in an argument, it causes conflict, and I don't know what to do. We've actually had a couple people we've suggested, all right, look, if it creates tension or conflict, write a letter. The great thing about a letter is they can sit down, they can read it over, they can really understand what it means. You're not getting in a heated argument. We've had a couple of people do that and come back and said, this has
Change.
completely changed our marriage.
Mm.
It has to be an honest, vulnerable.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if talking doesn't work, sitting down and having that communication because you have different communication styles or it just causes conflict, sit down, write an honest letter about how you're feeling and give it to your spouse. And I know for several people, that's been a game changer as well.
I
So
love that. What a
know,
great
really-
idea.
We also created 2 workbooks for couples. One's an emotional one and one's a sexual intimacy one. And the reason we created both of those that we have is for couples to sit down and be like, I
Yeah.
don't know where to start.
Cool.
And so we have all these barriers that keep people from having a great marriage, whether it's phone distraction and addiction to whatever it is. And each topic has a list of questions, and we ask you to rate it. Where do you rate this area in our marriage? Oh, you rated a 7. Well, I rated a 4. Let's talk about why our rating is not equal and how we can get it to a 10.
Yeah.
Each subject and category, which is a barrier to good intimacy, is talked about and discussed and rated between the couples. And we've heard so many good things. It's like, okay, just like the app Conversation Starters, the intimate conversation starters, sometimes people need to, I don't know where to start. I don't know what the barrier is, and have something laid out in front of them and say, okay, we'll start right here and let's see where this goes, right? Like, because you get to a point where you're like, we're willing to try anything.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee wives or husbands that have shut down, they still want to fix the marriage.
Yep.
They're probably not
Just don't
given
know
up.
how.
They don't know how,
Yep.
or there's some kind of resentment really stopping it that needs to be discussed. Or maybe there just needs to be some kind of romantic gesture that's just like, showing, like, maybe for a man, it literally showing up some flowers or something your wife would like. Say, I'm taking you on a romantic date tonight. Just please hear me out and go find somewhere and just say, I want to fix this marriage. I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
Yep.
How do we move forward? And that gesture might just start something.
Well, and I think what's great about the questions too is you'll find things out. I mean, Amy and I did a bunch of them and I'm like, I had no idea you felt this way
Yeah.
on this. That's right.
21
no idea.
marriage, we're still learning.
And I think if your spouse is answering the question and saying, oh, I strongly disagree or what have you, if it gives a lot of good feedback. And then you can have that conversation. Well, why are you feeling this way? And what can we do to make it better?
That's right.
And again, I think it comes back to so many couples just don't know how to start the conversation or where to begin. And everything we've pretty much designed and done, whether it's the workbooks or the questions, is to prompt those discussions
Yeah.
and figure out, okay, where do we start? How do we get into these conversations and break down the barriers that are keeping us from having the intimacy that we want?
Because that is the only way to fix it.
That's right.
It really is.
That's right. Yeah. And you guys are doing a great job with that. In my day job, I'm a financial advisor. And it's funny how many
Oh,
times the conversation with a couple, we're saying, getting ready to retire or move into those years of your life, and you say, well, tell me, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? Like, what do you want? They have they've never talked about it together.
Mhm.
It's the same thing you're saying. And this, again, we've lived together under the same roof for 20, 30 years. And we have no idea what's really inside the heart or mind of our spouse. And
Yes.
again, let's just break the barrier down of communication. And it will probably, like your story tells, opens up everything. You will start to fill each other's cup in such a cool way that the sex is incredible. It's so much better. You're like, where has this
Yeah.
been? Well, it's because it's all right. It's ultimate intimacy because you're talking about
Yeah.
all of the things of our heart that matter, right? And for a guy, we're like, I don't want to talk about things of the heart. I want to talk about sex and then move forward. Like, but it's not true. He thinks that's true.
Yeah.
But what makes it ultimate is when his wife is so connected to him spiritually and emotionally and mentally that there's something special, right?
You're
Right.
exactly right. No, most husbands out there don't just want to have sex. They don't want their wife just to have sex to have sex. They want to be desired. They want that connection.
You want their wife to love
It's
it,
That's
right?
right.
so much,
Really
so much.
great when your wife loves it too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One question I have to ask you, and then we'll kind of let everybody know how they can find you and all of that. You had mentioned it too, so I think we've both been married similar amounts of time, and I bet very
Yeah.
similar stage of life. So we have a few
Yeah.
kids that we're a homeschool family. We've got one who's going into her senior year, one that's sophomore, and then a couple youngers after that.
Nice.
Same.
Same.
That
Okay.
works. Same.
So what do we say to the young adults, unmarried Christian young adults who want to do it better? We want for them to do it better in those early years. Like, how many years did it take for us to get to this conversation with our spouse? What are you saying to your children, or to what would you say to my kids or young adults listening to this who want to do it the right way and they want to go into their marriage as healthy as they can in all of these things?
Yeah. Great question. I
You
mean,
go, or you want me to go?
lead us off and then I'll answer that. Yeah.
I think what is struggling in our world today is the word commitment.
Mm,
I don't think that young people that are going into this because of all the shows on TV and movies, all that stuff, we don't know what commitment means. Commitment means to work at something and put effort into something. It doesn't just mean stay married and don't get divorced. You commit to being intentional and putting effort into your marriage the entire time. And I think that it for me, our kids have watched us go through hard things, good things, amazing things, hard things. It's a cycle,
mhm.
right? They know that we're a rock and that we're going to make it through the hard times because we're committed. And they see the effort that we put into our marriage every single day. It's not weekly, it's not monthly, it's daily. And so that's what I would
I
say.
love it.
Yeah. I thought that was fantastic. And I would say just being very open, growing up, my parents didn't talk about things often. I would say we're very open with our kids, right? If our kids come and ask us a question, rather than shy away and say, well, we shouldn't talk about that, or let's not talk about that now. We really try to be open with our kids and answer all their questions and explain why and how marriage is, sex, really trying to share how great sex is. And it's something that God totally is on board with, but the world has kind of twisted it and made it look, completely different, but it's something that's very sacred and it's a good thing between a husband and wife. Just teaching them, I think, about, you know, s- answering their questions, teaching them about sex is very important. And I think finally just leading by example,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Like just trying to say, hey, here's what we believe and here's how we're living our life, and just trying to be that example.
I think the best gift that you can give your kids is to give them a good marriage.
100%. 100%. There
Yeah.
was a meme I saw the other day on on the internet that went around that said, like, the new rich is a kid that grows up with mom and dad in the home and still married. And it was just like,
Yep.
that's exactly right. Like, that's the new wealthy. If you've got a stable
Yeah.
home where mom and dad love each other and it's genuine, like, you've been given a great gift, a great wealth. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I just love that we can talk out loud about things like this. It's so critical. There's so many marriages that are struggling and hurting. They're maimed. The scars are there, right? The
Yeah.
baggage that they brought into their marriage, or the baggage that they end up carrying because they don't know how to get through this. You guys have given an opportunity for Christian people to be able to go have that conversation. And we're grateful for what you're doing. And tell everybody as we close up here, like, where can they find you? How do they get in touch with you? All of that.
Leaves off.
Okay. Our podcast is Ultimate Intimacy Podcast, and you can follow us on Instagram at Ultimate Intimacy App. And our website's ultimateintimacy.com, and you can download our app. It's a free download in both of the app stores. Just search up Ultimate Intimacy. It's a little purple and white logo. Did I miss anything?
No, and we answer all customer service or emails directly. So if you're emailing us, it's going to be one of us answering you. You can email us directly at amy@ultimateintimacy.com. And like I said, we respond to everything personally. So
Yeah, it's great. And for those of you that are listening in that know, if you go to getinthefight.club/Amazon store, in my story, actually, we have links directly to Ultimate Intimacy. So you guys can find Nick and Amy and Ultimate
Awesome.
Intimacy right from the website there if you go into the store there. So yeah, our Amazon store at getinthefight.club, you can find that as well. But guys, thank you so much for fighting for marriages and for the beauty that is Ultimate Intimacy. Appreciate what you guys have done, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your day, everybody. Go get in the fight, and we will see you in the next episode. Hey, guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.